Gotta go back on the channel. Okay, everyone, I'm so sorry. There's a little bit of a glitch. We're live on Beth Bell Live. Hopefully you're finding us here. I'm in Hawaii, so there's lots of variables and things happening, but I had a little glitch and I couldn't get on the channel live. So hopefully you're here with me now. I apologize for that, but it's such a beautiful day. And we're going to get to the heart of the matter. If you have a question that has anything to do with relationships, maybe something that's heartbreaking, maybe it's something that's just a heartache, we're here to answer all the questions live. And so hopefully we've got through all the glitches, and we're going to harness the magic of Mother Nature. So the island of Oahu is just incredibly beautiful. I do not have a live studio audience today because I'm here, but I think there's so much out there and so many energies that are going to be with us today. And hopefully many of you that are here with me live, you'll be inspired to ask a question. Now, if you're watching on replay, you can always go to bethbell.me/question and ask your question there. It's a little bit more private, but I always love having the engagement with you here live. So don't hesitate to put in the comments any question that comes to mind that's making your heart ache or maybe making your heart break. All right, we're going to jump into some of the pre-submitted questions because we have quite a few that came in. Question number 1. I've been wanting to do a psychedelic journey with my partner. They are open to it, but more hesitant. Do you think I'm pushing this and or that it could end up being a bad experience for us? I actually really like this question because I think that if you've watched my show before, you know that I've always been super anti-drugs, if you will. But there is a time and a place for Mother Nature's magic and psychedelics. Now, I think it's really important that you personally feel called to do any spiritual medicine. So I'm kind of getting from your question that you may be nudging just a little bit more than what's necessary. And I think gauging back with your partner and saying, hey, like, where are you really at with this? Like, how are you really feeling about doing a journey with me? And ask them these questions that anchor into their heart space, because oftentimes what happens is if we're not ready to do one of these journeys, our mind comes in and wants to shut it down and not be in the magic of what psychedelics can do to help us really open our minds and expand our consciousness. And then in some cases, it can turn into a situation where it's not as welcomed. Not only does the mind shut down, but sometimes there's just experiences that take place that are just not necessarily where we want to be. So I would definitely get into the heart space with your partner, ask them more questions about, well, where are they with doing a psychedelic journey, whatever it is, if it's San Pedro, which is the cactus, if it's something like ayahuasca, which is maybe a little bit more progressive for most people, or something like psilocybin. There's so many options that you can consider. Now, I also have on bethbell.me the psychedelic resource guide. So that might help you a little bit too. And it might help you with your partner to just get them to read from someone else some information that will help them gauge their own readiness and if it's something that they really want to step into. It's such a beautiful experience. And if you can have a journey with a loved one, I think you're going to find that if you're both ready for it, that it's going to be a really incredible heart opener and eye opener when it comes to what are the issues that are holding you back in life and in love. So I'd love to hear your comments on that. So if you have any additional thoughts, please put them in the comments below. And we'll keep moving along into the next question. Aloha, Rika. So fun to have you on live. All right, all the way from New York City. Okay, question number 2. I work a corporate job and feel like I've had to be in my masculine to keep my career moving forward on an upward trajectory. It's hard in my romantic relationships to not take charge. What can I do to get back to my feminine? Yeah, I think this is actually an issue for a lot of women today. We've gone through generations now where women have had to be more in their masculine to sort of be in that competitive place to get ahead in their corporate life, or just in general in whatever job you may be doing. But what I think we're really up for now is for women to harness their feminine, because we need that balance in the workspace too. So it's not always about being a man or a woman as much as it is about the energies of the masculine and the feminine. So what do I mean by that? There's a receiving that comes in being in your feminine. There's a softness that can come and a power that's in that softness. So that's the space that I think we're being called to bring forward, especially as women embodied in a female body, that we are really stepping forward with that softer, more powerful side. And that we're bringing an element of not being in this head-to-head competition, but that we're grounded deeply in our energies. And I think what that looks like is, prior to your day starting, meditation is always a beautiful place to just anchor in who you really are and what you really want to be experiencing for the day. Thinking about the emotions that you want to feel, maybe it's a sense of accomplishment. Maybe it's a feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself. And you take that into the workplace. But then when the drama starts happening and when the competition starts happening and different things are energies that are coming in that are making it feel so competitive, that we just take a breath and a step back to what we know when we're in meditation. That's that softer, more powerful, more expansive place. If we as women can start demonstrating the power of being in our feminine, I think what we're going to see is a shift of respect, a shift of the competitiveness that's not necessarily the best way to bring forward an organization's goals. I think we're going to find that there's a new way for us to work together as men and women, but as masculine and feminine energies, and that men start taking on a little bit more of that feminine energy themselves. Again, it's not about being a woman. It's about being in that receiving state, that energetic place where things are a little softer and more powerful. That's the place we want to be in. As women, I think we are leading the way. I think we do have to make a very conscious effort as to what that looks like. What is that energy? What is that power? And I also feel that it's very important to clarify that we're not talking about sexual energy here. We're not talking about using our womanhood and our savviness in that way. It's knowing who we are in that sensual place, but not using it as a sexual energy. Because a lot of times that's also what's happening in the workplace, is that men and women are using this sexual energy to navigate and to move things forward, but it's not in a healthy way. So you can use your second chakra energy. You can use your sexual centers, but in a sensual way where you really are grounded in who you are, knowing who you are with an open heart. Try it. I know you're probably thinking, wait, in a corporate life, going in with an open heart and being sensual. But when we do this, we're going to start to see a massive shift in how we navigate, because people will become more vulnerable. They'll become more supportive, and they'll feel more like they're part of something that's bigger than this little competition machine trying to make it out there in the world. So I would love to hear from any of you who are watching and go out and implement this. Come back to the show. Tell us what's happened. And if you have any comments, I'd love to hear them as to what you've already done to bring in your masculine and feminine balance, whether you're a man or a woman. All right, let's keep going along here. We've got lots of questions coming up. Question number 3. My husband and I have a group of friends that we often hang out with. More recently, I'm feeling may be toxic for me. I know them very well and don't want to lose their friendship. How do I know what's toxic in relationships? what comes is trusting. If you're asking this question, then you already know that there's an element of toxicity that's probably in this friend group. But I don't think we have to get so stuck on labeling anyone as toxic, because we call in all of our friends to help us on our journey. Now, there is a time and a place where, especially when we're deeply in our spiritual journey and we're in our awakening and we're expanding our consciousness and we're raising our vibration, that we start to have discord with people. It's just natural that at some point we start to feel like, hey, like there's just something here that's just not feeling like in the same vein as what I want to be talking about. And so one of the ways that I think is always a good gauge is, what is it that's being talked about? Are you talking about other people? Or are you talking about things that resonate for you, or things that are happening in your life right now? And when you start to realize, oh, we're just talking about other people, we're just gossiping, or we're just having that more, let's say, toxic type of conversation that just feels like it's not vibrationally making anyone feel happy, but it's making us feel connected because we're talking about other people. Or maybe we're talking about politics, or we're talking about something that just has a real low vibration. It might have a lot of energy to it, and it might bring up, a lot of really interesting dynamics in the group. But if it's not feeling like it's connecting you to each other, then as the person who may be more aware in that dynamic of whatever it is, the dinner party or the happy hour, that you just say to yourself, oh, let me think of something that I want to share about me, something that I'm struggling with. And again, you use your discernment. It depends. It might take a little bit to shift some of this energy, but you start to think about, like, what's really heavy on my heart, or what do I want support for? One of the things that's probably a really easy, I do something called a fireside chat with some very dear friends. And what we do when we come to the fireside chat is we have one conversation. And so I would encourage you to encourage everyone in your party to possibly have one conversation, which means that everyone's listening to each person. Now, I know if you're in a bigger party, it sometimes is a little bit more difficult, but what happens is people start to feel heard, and they start to feel like they're really part of this group. Now, at the same time, what we do is we throw something into the fire that we want to catapult in our lives. And we also throw something into the fire that we want to just burn up and get rid of. And what I find, and I know you don't have to use that language at a dinner table, like, what you're throwing into the fire. You can, but it just brings you back to really coming into, hey, I would love your support on this. This is what I want to ignite in my life. This is what I want to catapult. This is something that's really special to me. Or, something's weighing really heavy on my heart, and I really would like to just blow up these ideas that I'm having and these feelings that I'm having. And you start to get vulnerable like that. Again, I know it has to be appropriate, so use your discernment. But when you get more vulnerable, you're going to see the energy shift. Now, if the people at your table don't want to go there with you, that's okay. That's okay. I think at that moment, you just continue to do your best to be in your vulnerable, caring space. And then perhaps at the end of the evening, you go, I don't know. Like, are these the people, or is this the couple, or is that the couple, or is this the other friend that I really want to spend my time with? How do I feel when I'm with them? Am I feeling like I'm being seen and I'm being heard? Are we joining together to actually do something for the betterment? I really dislike bringing in the word politics, but it's coming right now. And so I feel like there's something here to address. I'm not saying that you can't ever talk about politics at a dinner party, but what I'm suggesting is that we move away from the traditional discussions around politics, and we talk more about what it is that we would like to see be different in our communities right at home, right in our own space. That when we start to take our energy and talk about, what can we do right here, right now? What can I do tomorrow? What can we do as a community? I think those conversations, especially as we move into the next 4 years, 8 years. I don't know. We don't know what's happening in the government, but we know what we can do on a local level. And so I think when we get there, we're going to find that there's less about what we disagree on and more about what we actually agree on and how we want to bring more unity and community into our lives. And so I feel like there's a reason why that's coming in. And it's probably because there's an element of this happening in your social circle that's bringing that vibration down. So before you go to a dinner party, before you go to a cocktail party, whatever, wherever social situation you're in, here's my encouragement to you. Come up with 1 or maybe 3 questions that you go, okay, these are heart openers. These are not like, let's just have all the gyrations of the mind and talk about all the hot topics that create a lot of discord. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying have the 3 questions, have the 3 heart-centered things that you want to talk about and learn something about your fellow friends at the table. Go in with this idea that, hey, I really want to understand what my friend believes about X, Y, or Z, whatever that is. And when you start to really want to hear more from your friends about what they are feeling and experiencing in their life, you guys are going to leave that dinner party and just feel so much more anchored into knowing each other on a different level and recognizing that you can make a huge difference in a small community social circle that emanates out into your community. Instead of leaving a dinner party where you're feeling like, oh, we were just at odds and just like, I don't feel good about what so-and-so said. So I think if you come into it that way and you start gauging as the night goes on, are we still talking about ourselves and how we feel, or are we talking about things that we can't control or that are, less than inspiring to our own individual missions in life? I think you'll find that things are going to shift pretty quickly and people are going to respect you for continuing to kind of shape and shift that conversation as you're sitting around the table. All right, hopefully that is also helpful. I always love to hear the comments. So please, if you're watching on replay as well, let us know what you think. Okay, let's go on. And if anyone live has a question, I'm happy to hear it. Just type it in the comments. All right. About 3 months ago, my boyfriend broke up with me. Then a week later, came back and proposed to me. I said yes, but am scared that he might revert back to breaking up with me. I want to get past this and be 100% in when I officially say I do. How would you manage this? Yeah, I think what comes to me is, it's not so much about managing it, because I feel like that's from the mind, and I get it. Like, we're always in our mind, like evaluating and, thinking about what we can do, what we shouldn't do, what they did, what they didn't do. I'm a queen of that as well. But when we get back to our heart center and we say, wait, okay, I'm anchoring in to what do I really love about this person? Why were we together in the first place? What is it that this person does for me? And are they helping to move me along in a positive direction in my calling in life or my career or whatever is important to you today? Or do I feel like it's a drag? Is it a constant drag? The way that you know this is through communication. Are you able to articulate your feelings and your thoughts when you're having them? Or are you feeling like, oh, I just don't want to say anything. I don't know. I'm not sure if I can really express what I'm feeling, or if I do, they're not going to accept who I am. All of these are the really important factors that come into play to knowing whether you should be in this relationship 100% or not. Sometimes these breakups are the best things that can happen, because it makes us stop and pause and say, wait, what does this person really mean to me? how do I feel about the idea of not being with this person? And what I'm getting is that your partner had that moment of, oh, wait, I recognize now more than ever what it is that this person, this beloved, is bringing to my life, and I don't want to not be with them. And it could be that. But the other thing that is even more likely is that as we move into deeper relationships and as we get more vulnerable and as we open our hearts with a beloved, it gets scary because it gets real. And when someone has our heart, I always like to think about relationships like holding someone's soul like a fragile egg. Like, you really have their heart and their soul. And so how you navigate with them is so important. And oftentimes what happens is all of the programs of all the past heartbreaks come forward, the memories, subconsciously, consciously. Sometimes we don't even know. And those things come forward, and it scares us. And so I have a feeling that that's more of what's happened with your partner, that there was that scary spot that they were like, whoa, I'm really in this, hook, line, and sinker. And I think even those words are scary because nobody should be hooked, on a line and sunk. It's so funny that analogy comes, but because what we're really wanting to do in our relationships is have non-attachment. We want to be deeply, madly in love. We want to give our hearts and our souls and, blow open our heart chakras and be deep in it. But we also have to find that, I don't even know why this word comes to mind, but what's coming is this funky place where we're scared and we're wobbly and we're not really sure. But we've got to be in this place where we know that everything is for our highest good. And that if our destiny is to stay with this person and to remain with this person, that we will. And if our destiny is that we are to move on for whatever reason, then we'll trust that that is our destiny. But in between, as I said earlier, it's about the communication that comes along with it. So we have to constantly, I mean, aren't we all tired of hearing like, oh, communication is the key? And yet it really is. And it's the key really to the deeper heart space, because when we get vulnerable and we share that vulnerability, like, hey, when you did that or you said that, it really made me feel scared, or it made me feel like you didn't care, or it made me feel blah, blah, blah. Like whatever you felt, when you start articulating your feelings, then your partner will know, oh, okay. And if they're not willing to listen to your feelings and or appreciate your feelings, like if they say to you, you shouldn't feel that way, there's no reason for you to feel that way, oh, that feeling is silly, then you're in a little bit different territory. And you really need to keep coming back to, honey, when you say that, it does not make me feel validated. It does not make me feel heard. And these are easy things for me to say as we sit here now, and probably easy things to listen to. But the reality is that sometimes they're really difficult to say because there's an emotion in there. And we don't want to be emotional because we got taught early on in our lives to not express emotion. So we've got to stay in that emotional place. We have to stay in touch with our feelings. And when we don't know how we're feeling, but we know that there's something that's just not quite right, then we just say, hey, I don't know what it is. I don't know exactly what's happening for me right now, but I don't feel great. I don't feel great because of this, or I don't feel great because of that. And keeping that open line of communication. And if your partner's not there with you, then you might not want to say, I do, right? They have to be with you. And that's a tough spot because a lot of times we get in these relationships and we get comfortable and we don't want to leave them. So only you really know where you're at with your partner and if the I do is the right thing. What's mainly coming forward right now is that you take time. I don't think you need to rush into this idea of marriage and I do and forever. You can feel forever. That's great. And it may be forever. But I don't think you have to jump into this and commit if you're having some wobbles. Work through the wobbles, because that's what's going to build the foundation for the relationship. Or it's going to tell you, like, yeah, okay, we're just not a match to work through the wobbles together. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're just in a different place, in a different space. All right. If you want more support, I'm happy to work with you. There's lots of different ways we can work together on bethbell.me. But I hope that's helpful. And if anyone has any comments on that, I always love to hear what you're thinking. Okay, let's keep moving along. I've been on a spiritual journey for about 10 years. I know that my inner work has helped to shift others. What's hard is there are people close to me that I wish I could have a stronger impact on. Yet, instead, it feels they are almost trying to hold me back. How can I shift this dynamic? I love this question because I think for most people, when you are deeply in your spiritual journey, and you don't have to be deeply, but especially when you're deeply in your spiritual journey, or you've just really jumped into it and you're like, oh my God, I'm learning, like there's another way to navigate this planet and this human experience, that we want everyone else to be on the journey with us. And that's beautiful. And we should hold the light, shine the light for that. But everyone is going to awaken in their own time, in their own way. And we, as awakened beings, can't shake and wake someone else up. The way that we can have the biggest impact is to keep doing our own work and to soldier on, if you will, with what are my limiting beliefs? What are the things that are holding me back? Whatever it is, on a small daily task or on a big mission. What are the beliefs that are doing something other than allowing me to feel happy? And when we focus on our own happiness, and we don't focus on, what else out there is making us happy, whether it's a people, places, or things, and we just focus on that inner being and that inner happiness, that's where we have the biggest impact. Now, with that said, because I feel like what's happening here for you is you're doing that, and then you're triggering the people around you because they actually aren't sure how to accept your happiness. We all know how this goes. Like, there's times in our lives, we've all had this, where we're just not in the best space. And someone else comes in and they're like super happy and they, exude their happiness. And we're like, oh, it's like just makes like super crankiness. So that often happens when we're deeply in our spiritual journey and we're expanding and we're open to possibilities and we're wanting to bring others along with us, but they're just not quite in that same energy. And so the most important thing we can do is continue to shine our light, but also love them for exactly where they are. Because if we focus on wanting to change someone else, or we focus on, I'm going to try to help them be happy. Okay, yeah, you could try to help them be happy, but it's in a different way than helping them. We help them by loving them. We help them by showing them, right? We don't do it by telling them what they need to do or could do or should do. Well, if you just did meditation, if you just did, and I'm not saying you're saying it like that, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we're so overzealous to share. If you just journaled, if you just went to yoga, if you just invite them. Invite them to yoga. Invite them into your space. Invite them. And what also is coming is touch more. Appropriately touch more. Say less. I think we can have a tremendous impact simply by giving our presence. And when we can look at someone, whether it's a friend or a loved one, or maybe even a stranger at Starbucks, when we're wherever we are, I don't go to Starbucks, but wherever we are, and we're having an interaction, that we have that moment of just eye connection, and we just look at each other, and we just validate, like, I see you. And maybe you even just say something nice. It really helps shift the energy. It helps people to just go, oh gosh, you see me. you see me. I know there's a lot of times when people are having a hard time finding employees. And I find myself saying, hey, thanks for being here at work, especially if it's a holiday, especially if it's an early morning shift. Hey, thanks for being you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for helping to make a difference in my experience today and my journey. And that acknowledgement and that eye contact and that love that you can exude, and again, appropriately, is going to make a huge shift and a huge difference. So I'm just looking back at the question because I know sometimes we get into the energy of so much more than what's asking the question. So I want to make sure that I'm actually answering this question. Yeah, so how can I shift this dynamic? I think it's really just accepting your love, your light, and spending more time having the eye contact, touching more, saying less, and being present, because that really is the gift that we can give to the world, is our soulfulness and our presence. All right, let's keep moving on. We've got a couple more questions here before the end of the hour. How do I know the difference between lusting after someone versus loving them in the beginning of a new relationship? Ooh, this is a hot one. I think lusting and loving are both beautiful things. And we know that there's stages of love. And the first stage is always attraction. And the second stage is infatuation. And that's usually where sort of this lusting idea comes in. And, I think there's a very biological component to lust. And yet there's also a very romantic, loving thing, because it brings this chemistry and this attraction that allows us to be in a more open heart state. I know lust is maybe not as much of an open heart, and it's a little bit more of like a biological, I want to be in an intimate situation with you. But oftentimes it's that lust, that passion that brings people together to start the journey and the process of falling deeper and deeper into love. Now, I think the most important place to be with lust and love is that you lust and love yourself. Now, what do I mean by that? Everybody talks about self-love. Self-love is great, sometimes hard to get to, because our mind wants to tell us all the reasons that we're not lovable. Our subconscious mind likes to tell us all the reasons that we weren't loved when we were a child. I mean, we can go on and on about self-love and how challenging it can be to just shut off the inner critic and just be in that place of, oh, I'm just going to compliment myself today for whatever it is, finding that self-love. Now, when it comes to self-lust, I think here's where there's some really beautiful magic that can happen. And that magic is when we're able to really feel into our own sexual energy and our sensuality, and we can connect into ourself, then we start opening other centers within ourselves where I think the sensuality, the sexuality, and the self-love all come together in an incredibly beautiful way. And when we do that, we can share that love and that lust and that sensuality with our partner or an appropriate partner. And we're not necessarily, I'm answering this, I guess, more as though you're single. I don't know if that's the case or not in the question, but that when you're out and you're looking for a partner or you're interacting with people, that you just have a real keen awareness of like what lust is, but you don't necessarily feel like you have to act on it, because you want to have the mix and the balance of all of these together. That it's more important to you to have that deeper, soulful, sensual connection with yourself that you want to share with someone, as opposed to just act out on some kind of a lustful, more instinctual, reproductive feeling. And, you probably will find that you're going to make some better choices as to who you actually want to share your own love, your own light, your vulnerability with. And that you know that you can always pleasure yourself, that you don't have to have someone else in your life. Yes, of course, most of us want someone else in our life, so I'm highly encouraging that. I'm just suggesting that when we're in periods of our life where we don't have a beloved, that we don't need to act on the lust just to feel like we're able to feel into that connection with that sexuality and that chemistry that's within each one of us as a human, to really want to experience another level of pleasure and another level of enlightenment is what comes to mind, because that's really what the orgasmic experience is we just feel open and we feel light and we feel love and we're out of our minds and we're in our hearts, and we're able to really open that space when we have all of these beautiful connections together. I hope that's helpful for you. I feel like there's a little bit more we could say here about the lusting versus loving, but I would also love, if you're watching live, that you enter in a little bit more information on that. And if not, and you're on replay, or if it's not even your question and you have something more that you want to ask about that, please do. I think it's a great topic. I think it's one that we need to talk more about, not less, because there's just a lot of confusion out there as to, I think where sexuality comes in and fits into the picture of our own self-love and sensuality. Okay. All right. Let's jump here to this. I think we've got time for just one final question. Okay. I'm single and have been for what feels like forever. Is there anything specific you suggest that could help me get out of the funk? I feel like this question, it doesn't come up every show, but it comes up a lot. It comes up a lot and it's interesting too, because it's very dovetailed off of the last question. I think oftentimes we get into a rut when it comes to being single. And depending upon your age, and that doesn't mean that age is the total factor here, but what I mean by age is we have a lot of different experiences that come into our life. And when we have a pattern of experiences, so as we've lived more years in our life, had more experiences in our life, then we have these patterns that stop us from wanting to be seen out in the world sometimes, where we look down, we don't want to make eye contact. We've kind of lost the fun that we had in grade school, junior high, high school, I guess is what I'm trying to say, when it's all like exciting and we haven't experienced all the heartbreak wounds and the rejection. I think it's really the rejection part that comes in here, and the heartbreak part, that when you've opened your heart and then something happens and you close it. So it's the pattern, I think, that you're in that's causing you to remain single. And what I would encourage you to do is to just sit with yourself a little bit, journal on this. Like, what is it that's stopping me from having conversation with strangers? Like, what is it out there that is stopping me from wanting to engage with someone? Because oftentimes it is that rejection element. And we've experienced it in lots of different ways. We've experienced it at work. We've experienced it with friends. We've experienced it, in social circles. And so that rejection of someone else not liking us, someone else not wanting to, to see us and appreciate us for who we are. And that's, I think, where we anchor back in to knowing who we really are and wanting to really, really show up regardless of what someone else is going to reflect back to us. It doesn't mean we don't care. It simply means that we're not going to let their reaction to us stop us from saying hello, giving someone a compliment, seeing someone for who they really are in that moment, which just may be that they're a random stranger that has beautiful eyes or a beautiful shirt or something that you want to acknowledge about them. And why I'm saying that is that it starts to open up and take away the rejection scare that's probably causing you to be single. And what you're going to find is that you're probably going to have new friends. You're going to learn new things. People will open up to you just randomly, and it doesn't have to be anything like super important, but it can just be that there's something that comes to you and you go, oh my gosh, I just learned something new from this stranger at the grocery store. And it was simply because you were opening up your energy to meet someone new, because you don't want to stay single forever. So I think leverage the beauty of being single, leverage the beauty of really being out there in the community and just opening yourself up and not fearing that rejection. And it's going to help you in other relationships. It's going to help you, especially I think at work. I'm feeling that there's also a level of rejection. And I'm not saying that you specifically are being rejected at work. I'm just saying that there's times when we share an idea in a meeting and someone doesn't acknowledge it, or they steal it, or whatever. So I digress slightly, but I'm really getting the energy that this rejection component is going to help shift for you every aspect of people seeing you and seeing your strengths, seeing your beauty, your inner beauty, and giving them inspiration to start approaching you, so that it's not even a hard thing to make, so you're making this conscious effort, like I'm going to smile more, I'm going to look at people more, but that it just instantly exudes from you to where people are coming up to you. And that's a beautiful place to be, because then you'll just start to be making new friends, and I'm sure lots of things will open up for you. All right, we're coming down to the end of the hour. As always, I so love that you're here with me live. I love that you watch on replay. I love all the questions that you ask, and you can always go to bethbell.me/question. And there's tons of resources on bethbell.me. We've got the Awakening and Healing Handbook. We've got the Psychedelic Resource Guide. So as we addressed earlier in the show, there's lots of information in there. I'm not here to tell you what you should do or shouldn't do when it comes to a psychedelic journey, but there's a lot of interesting information that I think will help you decide for you what may be right. Now, there's also the herpes handbook. Say, why herpes? There's the viruses of the mind, but there is also the herpes virus. And I think we learned with COVID that virus shame is the real thing. And so the herpes handbook helps you to really learn about a lot of options, but it's about the emotional aspect and the emotional angle of really moving through shame and guilt in our lives as a whole. All right, if you want more support, you can always book a session at bethbell.me. I would love to work with you and help you through anything that's making your heart ache, or maybe you have a broken heart. All right, until next week, every Sunday, 11:11 Pacific time. I look forward to seeing you then, and I'm wishing you much bliss and love on the journey. Namaste.